Play, Practice, Play, Lesson 1, Goal Scoring by myself, Michael Houghton. So what is play, practice, play? So basically, this is something that's taught on the Level 1 hockey course here in Ireland, and it involves getting players to do game-based drills rather than just your standard follow-me drills. So you may have coached before with something like setting up cones and having the players pass and follow the cones. It's trying to get away from a lot of that sort of coaching and trying to move to exercises where players will actually make game-based decisions. The big focus for the coach becomes this term technical correction, which is basically where you're trying to ensure that the players are making or doing the drills or doing whatever the activity is correctly. As I mentioned, the idea is that it's going to be game-based and they play it first, right? So play and then practice and then play. The practice aspect, we introduce a drill, and that allows us to correct some sort of mistake or show some sort of technique. We then go back to the game, and this time the players see that they've made the correction. Hopefully they realize that. And this can be used from ages from first class and up. So it's a great one. It goes all the way up to senior hockey, and it can be used at junior level as well. Just to summarize then, so we first play. So we do some sort of game-based exercise where the players might realize that there's a mistake being made or that there's some learning that needs to be done. We then do a drill of some sorts. That's where our practice comes in, and we try and teach the correct technique. And again, there's lots of technical correction there. So that's when we're actually going through and, we might be doing one-on-one coaching to say, look, Bobby, you need to be doing this, or look, Sally, you need to be doing that. Or alternatively, bring everybody in, explaining the problem, try again. We then go and do the second play, which is where we go back again. We do the original activity that we started with. So our first play, we do it again for our second play. And this time the players get to see what their mistake is and hopefully learn from it. The best part for me about play, practice, play is that because it's game-based, it takes away almost your biggest issue that you have as a coach, particularly when you're coaching junior section, which is, when are we playing a game? When are we playing a game? You might get asked that 10 times in a training, and you're holding off for that last 15 minutes to play your game. With play, practice, play, we're getting into a game-based activity almost straight away. So it's great for the players because they actually get to play a game, which is what they really want to do. So I've put together a bit of a structure on how we're going to put these lesson plans together. So it's pretty simple. We start off with a warm-up. I'm going to talk about that in a second. We're going to do some stretches. It's an opportunity for the latecomers to turn up, particularly in junior hockey. That's quite common that you get kids turn up 5 or 10 minutes late. You then do some sort of warm-up game. I'm going to be showing some of these warm-up games in various presentations coming through. We then do our play one, which is going to take us around 12.5 minutes, our practice, which is another 12.5 minutes, and then we finish with our play at the end. So the nice thing is that we've been able to structure the entire lesson with a play, practice, play in a 60-minute lesson plan. With a senior team, if you've got 90 minutes, what I would typically do then is after the 60 minutes, I'd add 15 minutes of set play. So that might be your short corners, your press, long corners, anything like that to try and introduce some sort of set play aspect. And then you can go back into some sort of game-based activity. So maybe attack versus defense or something similar. So players really feel like they get off the field at the end of it and they've had a lot of game-based. They've been able to make a lot of decisions and they feel a lot better than on themselves than just running around cones for 90 minutes. So I mentioned the lesson plan one. So we're going to be doing goal scoring, and this is a bit of a summary of what we're going to be doing. So we're going to do our warm-up and stretches. We're going to play hockey bulldog. And even at senior hockey, I only played this recently at senior hockey, the adults loved it. So don't think that it's just for kids. It's great for adults as well. We then do play one, which is going to be a small-sided game with 3 goals. And we're going to be doing our practice, which is our goal scoring team drill, and then back to our play. And the idea and the reason we're introducing this at lesson one, is because we're going to have kids turn up and maybe new members to our club that haven't been there before. And kids want to do 2 things. They want to play a game and they want to score goals. So let's get them straight away off the bat trying to do that. I often see lesson plans where goal scoring doesn't come in until the 10th lesson. By that stage, all the kids have been wanting to do for the 9 lessons previously is try and score goals. So we're going to do it from day one. We're going to give the impression that, hey, look, we're here to give the kids the fun. And for senior hockey, it's the same thing. It doesn't matter if you're a child or if you're an adult, you still want to be trying to score goals. And that's where the fun is. So let's introduce that from the very first lesson plan. Now let's break that down and go into some detail. So for a warm up, especially in senior hockey, you often see this run around the field, do your stretches, go through. It's very boring and mundane, and it becomes almost more of a social exercise than it does about actually getting the heart rate up. So whether it's senior hockey or junior hockey, for me, it's largely the same thing. We want to keep it fun. For the younger kids, we can do something like Simon Says, because that gets them engaged quite early on and gets them listening. It also becomes quite a fun thing for them when somebody makes a mistake, and you'll see them tune in very, very quickly when you get a game of Simon Says going. For the older children, senior hockey again, do something like pass the ball around. So I'd often bring a tennis ball to training, and you can throw that around, and maybe they've got to make 5 catches in a row as a team. So you split them into 2 teams. You've got to make 5 catches in a row, or maybe there's a goal that they've got to score into, something like that. So do something to get them going. Get them warmed up, stop for stretches. So you're getting the heart rate up, you're getting them doing some stretches. And for me anyway, it unfortunately forced me to retire for a number of years, although I'm back now. I had to make sure you're stretching the back. So make sure that you're targeting specifically hockey areas. So your back, your glutes, anywhere in the thighs, the quads, areas like that. So you want to be making sure that we're warming up those areas that are likely to snap if we don't. So let's just keep that in mind. Look, young kids, they may not necessarily need the level of stretches that adults do, but it's about forming good habits from a young age. So we're then going to go into Hockey Bulldog, which is basically what I would call a warm-up game, right? It's just something to have a little bit of fun. And if you've got kids that are new to hockey, then they're going to be great to do this. Even if you're at senior hockey, like I said, this is still a lot of fun, and it gets the heart rate up, and it gets players tuned into hockey straight away. If you like, depending on your COVID restrictions, then you can just play a standard game of Bulldog. So before COVID, I used to actually get the kids to put a bib as make a tail out of a bib, and then the defenders would pull the bib out, and that's how they would get caught. These days, we may not want to do that, but you can still just do a basic touch depending on your COVID restrictions. Most people are probably familiar with the game Bulldog. It's called Bull Rush in other parts of the world, but in Ireland anyway, it's called Bulldog. But basically, players line up along the baseline. In this case, you're going to have a hockey stick and a ball, and then you pull out a couple of players. You typically start with one, but you may want to start with more than that as a defender. So they leave the ball behind, they come out, and basically they're looking to tackle the other players as the coach yells Bulldog. As you yell Bulldog or blow your whistle, it doesn't matter. The players will then dribble the ball from one baseline to the other, or from one end of the field to the other, while the defender is trying to tackle the player. If the player is tackled, the ball's knocked away, then they become a defender as well. And basically you can repeat the cycle until maybe there's only one person left. Obviously, just to take note that if you're in a situation where you might have 12 or 14 kids, or 12 or 14 players, then it can become quite messy if you've got, say, 10 defenders and only a handful of attackers. So see what you can do to limit that, because it can become a little bit dangerous. Some of the suggestions that I would have there is sometimes if there's too many defenders, I would make the defenders only be able to tackle with, say, your left hand. So you have your left hand on top, so you're getting them stretching, which is quite good. Or maybe just saying something like, look, whoever gets furthest or is the last person standing is the winner. Or alternatively, just make 3 attackers a winner and then move on and repeat the game. I talked earlier about technical correction. We can be introducing this even in a warm-up game. And the great thing about Hockey Bulldog is it's kind of the perfect warm-up game to introduce when you're first introducing kids to hockey. So if they haven't played hockey before, this is the perfect one. When it comes to the hockey grip, especially in Ireland, most kids are going to be used to the hurling grip, so they hold it this way, not realizing that they should, that's correct. They hold it this way, not realizing that it should be holding it this way. So if you're watching this from outside of Ireland, you're probably thinking, why would anybody ever hold the hockey stick the other way? It's because of hurling. For me, being from New Zealand originally, it was very, very strange, but my hockey sessions would typically be telling some 2 or 3 kids 10 times each, swap your hands, swap your hands, swap your hands. So this is going to get us seeing that straight away. As the kids are lining up along the baseline, we can check that they've got what we call their hockey position, right? So for kids, we want to get them in the hockey position, left hand on top, We're going to introduce their hockey hand, it's your left hand on top, and we're going to try and get them ready to go. Now, just a short note on that. If you do have a left-handed child come, they might really struggle early on, right? Now, thankfully, with hockey in the modern day game that it is, left-handers are going to be fine. And look, I knew many good left-handed players when I was playing as a child. And saying that, these days, with being able to hit the ball on the reverse, those kids will pick it up eventually. I wouldn't be necessarily trying to correct them too much early on, particularly if they're new to hockey. If they want to hold the other way just to get used to the ball control, fine. We can correct them after 2 or 3 sessions. So don't beat yourself up if that, if you got a child or two who is left-handed. 10% of the population are left-handed, so you are going to get 1 or 2 in your group. Don't panic too much about that. We'll deal with that as we go. What this game does do is it gets basic dribbling sorted from day one. So without even explaining what dribbling is, kids are going to be doing it, which is going to be great because it's just part of the game. They understand bulldog. They understand they've got to get the ball from one side to the other. You can obviously introduce the fact that it needs to be controlled. You don't just want them whacking the ball away, but that's easy enough, right? So you just say, look, you have to have control of the ball when you get over the baseline. This also introduces stick tackling from day one. And the rule here that I would always say to kids is you must keep your stick down on the ground, particularly if they're new to hockey and never played before. I would be saying you must keep your stick on the ground because of safety reasons, right? So particularly young children, they're going to come along and throw their stick up in the air. The reason we wear mouth guards at a young level, in my opinion, isn't because we're worried about the ball hitting the teeth. It's because we're worried about another stick. And certainly all the near injuries I've had with the mouth have always been from a swinging stick, not from a ball. That's more reserved for the senior hockey. And for the more advanced players, when they're dribbling, this is going to be introducing advanced dribbling techniques almost from day one, right? So you're going to be introducing the right drag. You're going to be introducing the Indian dribble. There's going to be so many various techniques that you're going to introduce early on without even actually coaching anything, just from saying, hey guys, we're going to play a game of hockey bulldog. I mentioned you've got 10 minutes to do this, and you can repeat the game several times until the kids are happy. Give them a quick drink break at the end of it. Again, as I mentioned, this is absolutely fine for senior hockey as well. It's a bit of a laugh for the adults. And as I always say, guys, we're coaching adult hockey. I only did this last week with my 6-year-olds. Come on, guys, let's do this as well. And they have a good laugh because of that. From there on in, we then go into our play. Now, I have managed to set up an example of how we're going to set up the pitch. I'm just going to draw here with what is the equivalent of Photoshop, just to show, again, it's going to be fairly dodgy how I do this, but hopefully we'll get the introduction. So we're basically going to, whatever space we have, ideally quarters if you're maybe 5v5 or 6v6. So if you've got 12 kids, maybe a goalie or 2, it doesn't matter. But look, whatever space you have, we're going to utilize. If you're coaching this at senior hockey or under 14s, under 16s, or under 18s, half pitch, I would ideally try and get the circle involved if I could. And if you have to, you can put some drop-down lines or some cones down to make the pitch a little bit less narrow so you're not using the full width. But either way, maximize the space that you can and adjust it accordingly. I would always say you're better to have too much space than you are for too little. So keep that in mind, that in my opinion, you're best to try and encourage the use of space as much as possible. So I'm just going to draw a halfway line down here. So if we're playing 5v5, maybe with a goalie, we might have a goalie in here and a goalie in here. And for your junior sections, like I always try to encourage goalkeepers, if your club has goalie kits, bring them out and try and rotate the kids each week to try and be goalie. Because if you can introduce kids as goalies at a young age, then they're going to certainly make it so much easier when they get to seniors, right? If we're playing 5v5, I might just play something like that, 2 defenders, a midfielder, and 2 attackers. It depends though, right? It depends on your kids. You might want them going forward a little bit more. Often kids, when they're defending, they'll hold back at the goal for too long. So you might just want to put 1 defender in and 2 forwards, or even 1 midfielder, 1 defender, and 3 forwards, depending on how you want the game to be played. Because this is a goal-focused game, then overpacking your forward line may not be a bad thing. And really, it's pretty simple. We're just going to make this 3 points and these 1 here. All right, so this is almost your hurling situation, okay? It's something I only picked up recently, but if you score in this goal, it's worth 3 goals. If you score in either of the 2 small goals, then that's only going to be worth 1. Ideally, you want this to be an actual goal. If you see one sitting around, I see too many training sessions where a goal is left on the sideline and not used. We want to be using that as much as we can. So if there's a goal sitting there, drag it in, because there's nothing better for the kids than actually being able to hit into a real goal rather than just cones. Obviously, for the side ones, these can be just smaller cones, and we're going to see what happens and just let the game run. That's all we're going to do at this stage. We're going to let them have a go, encourage them to try and get the ball in as many goals as possible, as many shots as they can, and that's how we're going to do that. So I'm just going to check that I've covered all of the notes. I think I have at this stage. Obviously, you need to put the players into teams at the start, so set that up as you go. Once you've done that for 12 and a half minutes, we're then going to bring the kids in and we're going to try and get them doing a drill, but a drill with still a game-based, competition-based element to it. So they're still going to be having fun and they're still going to be looking over their shoulder, making sure that they're doing better than the opposition. And the reason we're introducing this, even though it's a drill, we want the kids and adults as well to be feeling game pressure, right? Because this is something that you can't really teach. It's just something that they need to develop over time. So if we can be trying to bring that into our training sessions, then it's really going to help them when it actually comes to playing a game and getting out on the field. So with this here, it's very, very simple. Basically, we start the players at halfway, they dribble the ball up, they have a shot. That's really all they're trying to do. Every time the goal goes in, we're only playing with the main goal this time. Every time the goal goes in, it's worth a point to your team. And basically, you go one at a time, dribble, 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 shoot, dribble, 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 shoot, next one, go. And then basically the first team to 12 wins. So it's very, very simple in terms of what we're actually trying to do. Of course, depending on the age of the players that you have, we can make that more complicated. And for senior hockey, we can make this far more complicated. So it doesn't matter if you've got 8-year-olds, 18-year-olds, or 28-year-olds. This can be worked for that age group. And that's really, really important to keep in mind. And look, you don't have to follow this to the letter either. If there's some improvement you can make to it, then by all means do. But basically, some of the things that you can do to make this a little bit more complicated, obviously add a goalkeeper. You can, if you don't have a goalkeeper, then you can just put some cones down where the goalkeeper would stand, right? So this is really funny, particularly with junior hockey. The moment you put down 2 or 3 goals that resemble a goalkeeper, watch how many players hit the goals and the cones in the middle, right? It's unbelievable what that does psychologically, particularly for kids. But we want to be encouraging them to try and shoot to the corners of the goal. Sometimes as well, I'll add cones just inside the goal, just inside the goalposts. So maybe a foot or 2 in terms of the space, and you might want to make that worth 3 points. If you've got a real goal, then you can try and get them to hit the sideboard of the goal, right? So this is common in senior hockey. You'll often hear that. For me, particularly a shot from the top of the D, if you can get a player shooting and hearing 2 noises, the sideboard first and then the backboard as it hits, then you know you've scored a top goal that a goalkeeper is really going to struggle to actually save. So if we can be getting our players to be trying to hit the sideboard when they shoot for goal, obviously, it's probably more for senior players doing that, but even for kids, you might be encouraging them to get that sideboard, that double sound, to get the 3 points. And then obviously for the older players, look, obviously it's not really realistic necessarily for senior players to just dribble the ball up from halfway and shoot and score the goal. So we can obviously add in, maybe they go up in groups of 2. We can even add a defender if we wanted to. So they've got to go around the defender first before they shoot for goal. But even if you didn't and you just went up in 2s with a goalkeeper, you're working off posts, you're working off rebounds, you're working off a lot of things that are going to actually make a huge difference when it comes to actually executing those goals. And the big thing is, as I mentioned earlier, technical correction, right? So the technique on hitting, technique on positioning, decision making, this is our opportunity to break it down and make sure that our players are doing the right things at a very basic level. After that, we finish up, we maybe go and grab a quick water, come back. We can then go back into the game. All right, so we've now got 15 minutes to do the game. The kids feel like they've just learned how to score goals. The seniors feel like, right, they've picked up a couple of things when it comes to actually rebounds and posts and so on. We go back into the back into the game, and this time we play it out. We should see a massive improvement from our players. With the last 5 minutes or so, if we want to, we can remove those outside goals now altogether and just play a game. So now we just have a standard game. The players don't feel like that much has changed, and they've taken the learnings that they've had and they're applying it, and you're going to see that being applied in the lesson. And that's really the great thing about play, practice, play, is that you'll find that subconsciously the players will pick up what you've actually taught them and apply it to the game. And that's ultimately what we want to get out of a great session. I'm going to be posting 14 lesson plans over the next 14 weeks, hopefully. The idea being that these will cover your entire season. You run 14 weeks from now, between now and say Christmas, and then you can repeat the lesson plans after Christmas so that you can just do it again, but the players have matured and maybe they've forgotten the fact that you did this early on, or you might make some subtle changes. And so you can basically do all of these twice throughout a season. Very quick video to watch, and you've got your lesson plan. And of course, please adapt, evolve it, make it better, customize it as you see fit. And if you want to, please do subscribe. Other than that, I will catch you on the next lesson plan.